Welcome to Dismantle to Rekindle, the private podcast for the eldest daughter who is tired of performing and being seen as good while carrying the weight of everyone else's needs. Over these episodes, you'll understand why the parts of you that drive guilt, overthinking, and overdoing show up. You'll learn approaches, tools, and practices to gently dismantle these patterns. Not only will you feel seen, but you will also rekindle the belief that it is possible to rest, receive, and be taken care of. I'm Yuritsi, somatic practitioner and third-generation eldest daughter, originally from Michoacan, Mexico. I blend my lived experience along with my clinical knowledge and ancestral gifts to help eldest daughters shift from survival to aliveness so they can stop performing and feel taken care of to create the life they actually want. Today, I want to tell you my story, the lineage of this work, and how I got here. In this first episode, I'm going to be sharing my journey as an eldest daughter, from coming out of the womb, being considerate and caring for others, to the breaking points, to the healing journey that changed everything. I want you to know that the lineage of where the teachings and practices I will be sharing come from. And I want to give you a little bit of a roadmap of how to use this episode and get most of it. So let's jump in. I feel like I came out of the womb being considerate and caring for others. Third gen eldest daughter and my mom got pregnant at 9 months. So being considerate and aware of others' needs was deeply embedded in me. I learned early on that my worth came from what I did for others. I was a good student, listened mostly to my elders to try to make them proud. Eventually, I sought partners and more accomplishments to validate that I was worthy of love and attention. And while all this was going on, I was trying to be considerate and taking care of everyone, my siblings, my parents, my extended family, and eventually the greater community when I got into community organizing. I was good at it. I was really good at it. But underneath all the doing, there was something else happening. In my mid-20s, my mental health began to deteriorate extremely. I started having panic attacks. I had a lot of psychosomatic symptoms like pain in my body, headaches, back tension, things I couldn't explain. It wasn't until I took 3 weeks off work and went to Mexico that all my symptoms stopped. And that made me realize how much pressure I was putting on myself, trying to do good work in the community and be there for my family. I got so good at doing so much and thinking through problems that I couldn't feel my feelings. I didn't even feel that immense, intense joy on my wedding day. I was going through the motions. I was performing, but I wasn't able to be present. And I thought, I don't want this for my kids, for me. And around the same time, I eventually stopped organizing and becoming a therapist kind of fell into my lap. My friend from high school had just graduated from her MFT, so marriage and family therapist program, and she told me about it. And something sparked within me, and I decided to apply. I only applied to one program and I got in. I was a fresh newlywed and starting my MFT program while also starting my own therapy. And I learned so much about myself and how to help others, but I still wasn't feeling as much as I wanted to. Well, my first daughter came in and gave me a crash course in feelings. First off, the pregnancy was rough because all the grief came up. I was finally in a place in my life where I was doing things I wanted to do for myself. I was having fun. And now I chose to take care of someone again, something I've been doing my whole life. Like that felt so frustrating. And I had a I also had very little control over my symptoms, which felt really hard. Then came my birth, and whew, what a ceremony that was. It didn't go at all what I expected and what I had planned. I wanted to have an unmedicated birth at a birth center, and I ended up having a C-section at a hospital. I really felt like my body was broken, like I was broken. And that experience shattered something in me. It forced me to see that I have limits and that I can't control everything. A few years later, I ended up getting an ADHD diagnosis, and I was masking so well for so long, but I couldn't anymore. And this is where I began to let go of some of the eldest daughter responsibilities because I just literally couldn't. I couldn't be aware of every single thing in the household and my parents and my siblings and the community while also raising a child for the first time. It felt impossible. And at the same time, I also felt super irresponsible for thinking and doing this. During this time, I also began to process past traumas through EMDR and tap even more into my emotions. I was crying again, which felt so hard for me to do. It felt like I was pulling teeth to try to get even one tear out. I decided to create my business, and I thought I was on this different trajectory. I thought I had finally figured it out. I was finally in touch with my feelings. I was starting to put these limits, um, even though I was kind of kicking and screaming through it all. It felt like I was going into the right path. But a lot of my eldest program daughter programming was not fully letting go, even though I was doing all this work. I was still scared to say no or that I needed certain things. I was still trying to control a lot of things, people's reactions, people's emotions, especially my daughter and my husband's. I was still trying to prove that I was worthy through my accomplishment. I was still feeling a lot of guilt. And at the end of 2023, we had just bought our first house. After the initial excitement wore off, I actually got a little resentful of our home. I felt like I had to be now the main one cleaning, organizing, maintaining it. And I also had just had my biggest sales year yet. I made more than $100,000 in sales in 6 months in my business. But instead of feeling proud and great about all this, I actually felt this immense responsibility now to take care of this home, to show up as a six-figure coach and do whatever I needed to do, and just keep performing the certain version of myself. And eventually I shut down. Early 2024, I stopped selling. I didn't really care to upkeep or decorate the house. I realized that the success, the milestones, the achievements, it still wasn't enough. I was literally living my dream life at that moment, and I still felt not enough. During that time in early 2024, I started my root healing journey with gel. I was a body worker and someone who I would describe as a healer, and that experience completely changed everything for me. This was a healing journey like nothing I had ever experienced. She began to really see me, not my accomplishments, not my performance, just me. It was so uncomfortable because I would come to her with realizations, I would text her, I would make connections, and she didn't care about any of it. She saw that I was sharing these things to get praise and to be this good student, and she wasn't buying it. And she kept inviting me to be more honest, to be more connected to what was really going on in my body. And I sat with a question that she gave me that sat so deeply within me, and I think was a catalyst to a lot of the work that I'm now doing and the person that I am is who am I if I'm not helping others? And it was the first time I took seriously who I am outside of the conditioning, especially as an eldest daughter. And it was hard. I wanted to run away from life multiple times. I didn't know who I was without the doing, without the helping, without the overgiving, without the control, without the checking in. Um, and I started to practice allowing for my husband and community to really show up for me, even though it was uncomfortable as F. Um, Especially a big practice that I did during this time is allowing them to show up to provide support and care for me, even though I wasn't producing, even though I wasn't my ideal version, even though I felt like I was shutting down and in this like existential crisis. I wasn't making money. I was like a shell. It felt like I was a shell of a version of myself. And just allowing myself to receive this care and support was uncomfortable, but also deeply, deeply healing for me. I saw that I felt that I could still be loved without accomplishing or doing certain things. And that's huge for, especially for us eldest daughters. During that time, I also took a sabbatical and really focused on reconnecting to me, my joy. I started drawing, reading, writing just for fun, just doing things for fun and because I wanted to, not connected to any outcome. And I felt really confused most of the time. And I didn't try to figure, well, let me be honest. I did try to figure it out, try to figure things out, but kept on practicing I have this desire to figure out or get clear or figure, whatever. And then the practice of surrendering, like, well, we're not clear. Well, we just gotta go with the process and be in this existential crisis mode, this kind of void. And I just rolled with it. And I am very grateful that during that time I was in Joyful Marketing, which was a membership by Simone Grace Soul. So she's a business marketing mentor. Um, and I was grateful to be in this season of this void with Simone, because she was also going through her season of a void. I did several programs of hers during this time, including The Way of the Dragon, and her teachings, especially around impermanence, ancestral connection and veneration, and the importance of staying connected to who you truly are, were so important for me in this season. And I began to feel like I could live a different version of my life. And then I got pregnant again. Now, this was early 2025, and this is where the practice of integration came in. I began to imperfectly practice showing up more as my authentic self, not letting my needs and desires be second, but letting them be just as considered when I'm in relation, interacting with others, when I am working, when I'm out in the community, in the real world. And I began to see shifts. And at the same time, I felt so wobbly, like Bambi, like this little deer, like wobbling, trying to make like walk in the world. Um, and I would try to control again. I would overdo or overthink again, especially when those more difficult pregnancy symptoms would show up. And several times I would think, I don't think I can get out of these loops. I think I'm just going to be in these loops for freaking ever. Uh, and even with these loops and protective, what I like to call protective mechanisms coming out, I still practiced feeling deserving of love, allowing myself to receive, of my needs getting met, of living a life honoring my desires and joy. And I practiced connecting more to my ancestors, to Mother Earth. I practiced reaching out to my community more often because I know I couldn't and didn't want to practice this alone. I was planning on having a vaginal birth after cesarean, also known as a VBAC. And I kept getting all these buts along the way on how it couldn't happen or how it would be hard. But I believed it was possible. And I grounded in my desire for this and surrendered myself and surrounded myself with support of all kinds to make it happen. The biggest initiations and gifts for my life have been my children's birth. My first daughter's birth allowed me to connect to my feelings, especially my tears again. My second daughter's birth allowed me to see that miracles are possible. And all the work I had done the past year and a half would show up during my birth and postpartum. I allowed myself to be taken care of, and I felt it without guilt. I trusted my desires and advocated for my needs. I met my limits and capacity, and I ended up having such a magical birthing experience. I not only felt deeply supported, but like the most powerful I've ever felt in my life. And this experience has been my anchor, my proof that change is possible, my evidence that I am powerful and loved. I get to be both. A few weeks after my birth, it finally hit me, the pivot that I wanted to go into. After almost 2 years in the void, not knowing what kind of work I wanted to do, and I know I didn't want to do what I was doing, and I decided I want to support fellow eldest daughters. I want to hold space for the women who are tired of performing, who are tired of carrying the weight, who are trying to come back home to themselves. The teaching and practices on this podcast come from my lived experience, especially over the last 2 years. And I'm going to share with you more in detail where some of these teachings were curated or learned during the past 2 years, but some they have been learned even before that. And so this is my attempt at putting down where what you're going to be hearing on this podcast and my work, what it is rooted in. So first off, um, like I had mentioned, my root healing journey with gel was so just such a pivotal part of this piece of my healing journey. And a lot of it was birth, like what I'm talking about in this podcast, and now the work that I'm doing was either birthed or highlighted through my root healing journey. And so I just want to honor her, her lineage, and for the medicine that loved and guided me into these practices, specifically around the practices of honesty, intention, slowness, and deeply honoring of the body. And like I mentioned earlier, Simone Grace Soul's teachings have also informed this work. And I'm just so grateful for both of their guidance, our relationship, and their ancestors for allowing me to receive such meaningful gifts. And as you know, I'm a somatic practitioner. That's what I call myself. And first off, I just want to acknowledge that the term somatics was coined in the 70s by Thomas Hanna, but the practices developed themselves have deep roots in Eastern traditions like yoga, martial arts, and Qigong. And the truth is that these practices were extracted from their cultural and spiritual contexts and disconnected from the lineages, the cosmologies, the relationships that gave them meaning. And with that awareness, I'm still going to call myself a somatic practitioner, not because I align 100% with its origin, but because it is the framework that most closely aligns with what I value and practice for now. I would say my work is rooted in the lineage of practitioners like Stacey Haynes and Tanya Shuker, who hold somatics as inherently political, relational, and deeply respectful of the cultural context from which these practices emerge. I believe in Stacey Haynes' framework that we're all born with the need for safety, dignity, and belonging, and that much of our automatic behavior and protective responses um, from our nervous system are attempts to meet these needs. And I also honor and I love Tanya Shuker, who's a Lebanese somatic practitioner. I love her definition of somatics, which is the understanding of human beings as integrated mind, body, spirit, social, relational beings. And just her point of view of constantly inviting us to practice as practitioners to include, be mindful, and hold deep respect for those who come from extreme trauma, displacement, and genocide. And my experience with Internal Family Systems by Richard Schwartz and Interrelationship Focusing by created by Anne Weiser Cornell and Barbara McGavin is the how. But I want to also be mindful because while IFS, Internal Family Systems, and Interrelationship Focusing are taught more as Western models, their foundations also have deep roots in Indigenous worldviews and practices. Research has found that IFS concept of self and the healing of parts align with many indigenous cosmologies and worldviews, including the Aniyunwiya or Cherokee understandings of self and relationship. And going inside to access this inner wisdom is actually an act of decolonization, a remembering of knowledge that has always been there. And that's how I'm going to that's where I kind of take these learnings and frame them around this belief. And my work invites eldest daughters to meet their parts that drive the guilt, the overthinking, the overdoing with a lot of curiosity and care. And we tap into our imagination to give them names, images, places, and stories so they can be seen as something created to survive, not just who they are. And my work has also been informed by teachings from womanism, Chicana feminism, and Marianismo. These teachings help remind us that healing is holistic, that we cannot separate the personal from the political, the body from the spirit, or the individual from the community. And it gives us language to name the oppressive structures that have shaped our conditioning and to remember the ancestral wisdom that was stolen from us. And to help name the invisible conditioning of the good daughter, the self-sacrifice, the guilt, the shrinking. I also incorporate other indigenous worldviews, especially the teachings of Robin Wall Kimmerer from Braiding Sweetgrass and Wahinkpe Topa for Four Arrows and Darcia Narvaez in their book Restoring the Kinship Worldview. And their teachings that share that we are woven into a web of relationships, that our bodies, our ancestors, the earth, and each other, and that healing is not individual, but a communal return to balance. That reciprocity is a thread that holds everything together, reminding us that we are meant to receive as much as we give. And ideally, I would love for my work to invite eldest daughters to reconnect to their life force energy, like the tonali described by the Mexica or the Juriata from the Purepecha, so they can remember their place in this world and hold a deep honoring of their unique desires and needs, including their right to rest, receive, and be held. And I want to be honest, in the past, in striving to be a good student or appear right or wise, I have tried to emulate other healers, coaches, teachers. And I'm practicing trusting my voice, integrating my learnings, trusting my unique medicine while honoring how others have informed them. And this is my imperfect way of doing that. I may have forgotten people or teachings that have influenced my work. Or even as I name them, I may fall back into this conditioning and prioritize sounding right or wise. And the my practice is to continue to slow down and discern what is mine to share. And I want to be transparent about that. Now, where does my uniqueness come to play? Well, I'm a manifester in human design and an Aquarius rising. So I'm here to initiate, to explore what hasn't been thought about yet, and to create something new. And it's so fitting because my interest right now is dismantling eldest daughter conditioning because it ties into deeper patterns that I feel we are ready to rewrite as women and femmes, especially those with a lineage of colonization. My younger self, little Yudi, I'm so happy she's here and informing this work. The one who went on adventures, who created stories and had a big imagination, La Traviesa, and the one who just did things for the plot. She informs this work as well, and she's excited to see what's possible. And the way I have feeling deeply taken care of by cultivating my relationship with ancestors and Mother Earth is also present. The ancestral nudges I feel are the emotions and shapes of experience, my body experiences, especially around the despair and frustration of the women in my lineage who upheld responsibilities without rest or reciprocity they deserve. The deep love I feel as I sit with them at my altar, the messages they send me through real life synchronicities, through dreams, through phrases of how loved I am. The relationship and reconnection to the land, especially with my plant siblings, rosemary and lavender, the way they showed up for my birth is like magical. I can't get over the connection. I'm a shout out to my doula as well because she was integral in this process too, to help me reconnect to my power, to how held and loved I was by my lineage, our lineages, because we come from a similar place in Mexico. Also, shout out to my medicine of Copal and Palo Santo. They have held me and made me feel things that my lineage has passed down. They have triggered memory and shown me that I am never alone, that I come from a lineage that is powerful and deeply loving. It's the sensations in my body when I connect with others and their ancestral stories that mirror my own. The amount of times, and I've told this to various clients, I really feel like our ancestors meet and they're like, they need to work together. And somehow we end up working together because the stories that get shared by most of my clients mirror so much of my own ancestral stories. It's wild. It is. And so that honors my work and what I'm sharing in this podcast. It's the dreams and the visions that show me what's possible. I'm a big dreamer, and I mean dreamer in like wanting bigger things for myself, my family, my community, and also a dreamer like I have these really intense, beautiful dreams. And just I'm constantly in awe and in this space when I am really connected to myself. I am in this space of anything is possible. Anything can happen. And that informs this work. Um, all of this informed this podcast and my work. And it has taken years of listening, practicing, integrating, and I am nowhere near finished. But I have done it enough where these learnings feel more true in my body. And I have a desire to continue to deepen my embodiment around these truths. So, how do you get the most out of this podcast? Well, first off, I want to share something that I share with my clients. Trust your process. You may need to re-listen, not do anything at all, do it all. And I mean practices that I'll be sharing. Just go with what comes up. Part of dismantling from eldest daughter conditioning is to trust yourself and your process, even though it may be messy, put you through loops like it did for me, or not make sense. You have to trust it. Um, Listen in order or don't. I would recommend to listen in order because the episodes kind of build on each other. So next episode we're gonna be talking about guilt. So guilt leads to care, and care leads to expression. Expression leads to desire. So if you feel called to jump around, feel free, go with your gut, but and your body knows. Just trust it. And something that also Jill mentioned to me, and when we were initiating our root healing journey was she would tell me something and I'd be like, "Can you repeat that? I want to write that down?" And she's like, "You don't need to. You need to write it down. Your body heard what it needed to hear, and it's going to take what it needs to take." And so, if that resonates for you, then take that. Um, and listen with curiosity, not pressure. There's no gold star here. There's no finish line. You don't have to get it right. Just listen. Let the words land. Let yourself feel what comes up. Let yourself practice what you desire to practice. And if something hits you, if you feel like a shift in your body, if a memory comes up, if you feel a wave of emotion, pause, take a breath. Notice what's happening. Write it down if you want for your own reflection, but just be with whatever comes up. And at the end of each episode, I invite you to try something small, a moment of receiving care, of expressing, of naming a desire, for example. You don't have to do it perfectly. Just attempt, just invite yourself, invite your body to try it out. And like I said, trust your process. If that's something that it feels like you desire and you want to, experiment, go ahead. If it feels completely wrong, but you still want to try it, do that and just notice what happens. If it feels completely wrong and I don't want to do it at all, do that. Just let the seeds get planted and notice what direction you want to take. And I would say this isn't going to be a one and done listen. You may need to hear the guilt episode 3 times before it really lands, or any other episode, and that's okay. Come back to them, let them sink in. Um, my One of my clients told me the other day, she's like, "You're like, um, your work and your words are like seeds. Like when you told me something, because we're not working together right now, but last year when we worked together, like that seed, like what you said during that moment, I finally am able to see the truth around it right now, today. And so allow the seeds to be planted, like I mentioned. Um, in the last episode, I will give you a taste of how it feels like to work with me and what to expect. So listen to it if you're interested or when you become interested. And if you're not ready to do this one-on-one work, that's fine. But if these episodes deeply resonated with you, I would invite you to listen to that episode, and see what lands, what's possible if we work together. And one more thing, this is so fitting, right? Don't overthink this. If you catch yourself analyzing whether you're doing it right, just notice it and come back to the practice or to your life. This is meant to be a supportive experience, not an extra to-do list or another way to shame yourself on how you're doing, not doing things right or how you should. Like I mentioned, trust your process. Now, thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to listen, to try this work. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to step into that invitation to try. My story is not about being perfect. It's about coming back again and again to yourself with so much love and compassion. So let's take a breath. And before you move on to the next episode, I invite you to place a hand on your heart if it feels comfortable. Take a breath, whatever that feels good for you, and reflect on what part of my story or my lineage or whatever during this episode resonated with you. Is there anything that helped you feel hopeful or like there is another way of existing as an eldest daughter? And if no, that's cool. Usually, when something stands out to us in a podcast, in a conversation, in a movie, something, those are nuggets of what is next or what is possible for us. Those are little breadcrumbs that we follow. And that's how I've lived my whole life. When I receive a breadcrumb, when something interests me, and that's something I'm very grateful for, that I have listened to the little breadcrumbs of something that's calling me or interesting me and following that and seeing where that takes me. And it's never steered me wrong. You don't need to do anything. Just trust that it's guiding you. Your little breadcrumbs are guiding you to where you need to go. And lastly, I would love to hear your feedback. So feel free to DM me on Instagram or send me an email with anything that resonated, or if you have any questions, I'm here. All right. So let's dive in. See you in the next episode.